What happens when the most powerful empire in the galaxy mistakes silence for weakness? For centuries, the Galactic Dominion had spread like wildfire across the stars, consuming worlds the way a flame devours dry leaves. They were a civilization of impossible scale. Thousands of systems, trillions of subjects, and fleets so vast their shadows eclipsed suns. Their expansion was not driven by malice, but by hunger. Hunger for energy, minerals, and the one resource that no empire could ever truly possess: control. And then, they found Earth. It was discovered almost by accident. A scout ship from the Dominion's Outer Reach Fleet, Survey Vessel 19-B, detected faint electromagnetic patterns radiating from a small blue planet, orbiting a yellow star. At first, the readings seemed ancient, static echoes of a civilization long dead. But then the patterns shifted, organized themselves: language, mathematics, music, a living species, broadcasting its voice into the void. The Dominion's Admiralty Board was intrigued. Primitive life was common in the galaxy, but intelligence, sapient life capable of transmitting across space, was rare and often valuable. The Empire had learned to harvest more than just physical resources. Subjugated species could be enslaved, their cultures dissected, their technologies repurposed. Humanity, the board decided, would be next. Commander Threxval was given the assignment: lead a resource extraction operation on Sol 3, the local designation for Earth. It was supposed to be routine, a simple acquisition. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, gravity tolerable, oceans rich in minerals, biosphere teeming with harvestable genetics. And the natives, humans, were still bound to their single world. No interstellar weapons, no fleets, no defense grid. The Dominion's analysts described humanity in one word: unthreatening. The first Dominion ship entered the solar system on a quiet night over the Pacific. It was invisible to radar, masked behind a veil of distortion fields. From orbit, the crew gazed upon the blue sphere beneath them. Cities glowed faintly along its dark side, tiny clusters of light that reminded Threx of fireflies on a corpse. They believed themselves mighty. One of his officers sneered, but they live in caves of glass. The Dominion began their extraction protocols. Atmospheric siphons deployed into the upper layers to harvest nitrogen and trace gases. Oceanic drones descended to test for mineral density. From the dark side of the moon, relay stations beamed data back to the fleet. It was perfect, efficient, silent, until the sky answered back. At first, it was static, a ripple through the Dominion's communication grid. Then came a burst of electromagnetic interference, so powerful it disrupted orbiting equipment. Screens flickered, instruments died, and for a brief, impossible moment, the entire fleet heard something. A voice. It wasn't transmitted on any known frequency. It wasn't a broadcast. It was everywhere at once, vibrating through the hulls, seeping into the air, a low whisper that crawled beneath the skin. The translators couldn't decipher it, but the human words that did break through chilled the officers to their cores. "We see you." Threx dismissed it as a coincidence, an atmospheric anomaly, perhaps a freak resonance caused by the planet's magnetosphere. But then, the anomalies multiplied. Weather systems shifted unpredictably. Lightning storms formed over every siphon station within hours of deployment. Oceanic drones vanished, their signals swallowed by sudden whirlpools that appeared in calm waters. Satellites sent to monitor human communication began to fail one by one, as if something on Earth was erasing them deliberately. Then came the recordings. Footage retrieved from one of the last functioning orbital probes showed something extraordinary. In the middle of the Pacific, where one of their largest oceanic extractors had been placed, the water itself was rising, curling upward against gravity, like a living serpent of liquid. Inside the vortex, energy readings spiked beyond measurable levels. The machine was lifted into the air, twisted apart. And then, nothing. A blinding flash. The probe went dark. When Threx's superiors demanded an explanation, he had none. The humans, according to all intelligence, lacked the capability to interfere with orbital operations. Their militaries were divided, their weaponry outdated. Yet every attempt to regain control of the planet's systems was met with failure. Weeks passed, and paranoia grew aboard the fleet. Crew members began reporting nightmares, visions of eyes watching them from the clouds, of voices whispering through the hum of the ship. Even the most disciplined soldiers couldn't sleep. One morning, a gunner was found dead in his cabin. No wounds, no sign of struggle. His face frozen in an expression of unspeakable terror. The Dominion Science Council blamed psychological contamination, an unfamiliar atmospheric resonance perhaps, or alien spores. They ordered the fleet to retreat to lunar orbit for analysis. But as they withdrew, every ship in the formation received a single transmission, piggybacked onto their command frequency. It was a human voice, calm, cold. "You came to take. You will leave nothing." The fleet's central AI immediately flagged it as impossible. The humans couldn't have accessed Dominion encryption, let alone transmitted through it. Yet there it was. Undeniable. A message that bypassed every security system known to the Empire. And then, for the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Dominion faced resistance. The first strike came from below. A wave of electromagnetic interference surged from Earth, strong enough to disable half the fleet's systems. Dominion ships lost power, their engines sputtering, their shields collapsing. A few plummeted into the atmosphere, burning bright as they fell. The survivors attempted to stabilize orbit, but the energy waves kept coming, rhythmic, deliberate, like the heartbeat of a planet alive with rage. What none of them knew was that Earth had always been alive. Not in the biological sense, but in ways far older, far deeper. For billions of years, the planet had evolved consciousness through the countless minds that walked upon it. Every thought, every dream, every death had left an imprint, a neural web of memory woven into the fabric of its magnetic field. The humans called it the collective unconscious. The Dominion called it impossible. Now, that consciousness had awakened. It remembered the fires, the wars, the pollution, the endless suffering inflicted by its own children. When Earth vanished, the universe shuddered. Sensors from a dozen nearby systems blinked once, then failed. Navigation relays went blind. A whole quadrant of mapped space was replaced by silence. The Dominion's admirals spoke of a spatial fold, a cataclysmic rupture that consumed the Sol system. But some whispered that the planet had slipped away, pulled through a door that only it could see. And they were right. Earth awoke not in darkness but in light. The void around it was thick, almost luminous, nebulae of impossible color coiling through a calm sea of stars. There was no sun, yet day still broke across its continents. No moon, yet tides still obeyed a rhythm older than the sky itself. The people who survived, those awake during the vanishing, spoke of a strange stillness in the air, like the moment before dawn stretched into eternity. Satellites found themselves orbiting an unfamiliar cosmos. The constellations were wrong. The Milky Way was gone. Humanity had been displaced or protected. At first, chaos reigned. Governments collapsed, communications faltered, space agencies broadcast frantic signals, but there was no response, only the quiet hum of the stars. And then, in the silence, a single pulse appeared. It came from deep beneath the Earth's crust, low-frequency vibrations spreading through bedrock, into the oceans, into the very bones of the planet. It wasn't random, it was patterned, deliberate. When translated, it formed coordinates, points in space. The planet was showing them something. Humanity's brightest minds gathered in the ruins of Geneva, where the last surviving orbital network had been reassembled. Scientists, soldiers, and mystics alike pored over the data, and for the first time since the fall, the world listened as one. The coordinates pointed to a nearby cluster of stars, 7 lights forming a ring in the sky. They called it the Halo Verge. The United Earth Expeditionary Vessel Artemis was the first to depart. Its crew was small, scientists, engineers, and one man who had once been an astronaut before the sky burned, Commander Elias Kyle. He had witnessed the Dominion ship's fall, had seen the auroras of wrath dance across the heavens. Now, as Artemis rose through the clouds, he watched Earth's surface recede beneath him, blue, alive, impossibly still. "Home," he whispered, "or whatever you've become." The Verge awaited. The closer they came, the stranger the readings grew. Space itself seemed to ripple. Instruments couldn't decide if they were moving forward or inward, and then, without warning, the void opened into color, 7 stars encircling a vast emptiness. But within that emptiness was structure, a lattice of light, immense and intricate, spanning hundreds of kilometers. It pulsed like veins beneath translucent skin. The crew stared in silence as the lattice shifted, rearranging itself until it resembled a map, a memory etched into the stars. Dr. Sana Iqbal, the ship's physicist, spoke first. "It's us," she breathed. "Continents, oceans, fault lines, everything. It's a model of Earth." And at its center, a symbol appeared, a spiral of blue flame, identical to the one that had burned in the sky before the planet vanished. The Artemis transmitted the data back home. For days, the signal looped across every frequency until the planet itself responded, its magnetic field flaring in sync with the image. Then the Earth's auroras began to shift, forming the same spiral across both poles. The message was clear. The Verge wasn't alien. It was connected. A part of whatever the Earth had become, a mirror in the heavens. But there was something else hidden beneath the light. An echo. Faint. Familiar. A Dominion signal. Kyle stared at the readings in disbelief. "They're here," he muttered. "They followed us." What remained of the Galactic Dominion had not forgotten. The loss of Sul had shaken their empire to its core, but curiosity had not died with fear. Deep within the Admiralty's secret divisions, a new armada had been forged, one designed not for conquest, but containment. Its purpose was to find the lost planet and neutralize whatever anomaly had defied them. Their ships entered the Verge like hunters in sacred ground, but they were not the first. The Dominion fleet found wreckage drifting near the outer ring, a derelict vessel, blackened and silent. Its markings were human. The Artemis. The ship's hull was cracked open, its bridge torn apart by forces unknown. No bodies, no distress call. Just one message burned into the walls in human handwriting. "It's not a place, it's waking up." From the Dominion flagship, Archon Serax observed the remains through cold, slit-pupiled eyes. "So," he murmured, "the myth of the living world was true." But what Serax didn't realize was that the Artemis crew was still alive. Somewhere inside the lattice of light, Elias Kyle opened his eyes. He was weightless, surrounded by a storm of luminous threads, each pulsing with memory. When he reached out, they rippled like water, and scenes flickered through them. Earth's history unfolded before him, the birth of oceans, the rise of forests, the first humans drawing fire from stone. Every thought, every heartbeat, recorded in the planet's mind, and at the center of it all a voice, soft, ancient, impossibly vast. "You called me home," it said. Kale's breath caught. "Who are you?" "I am what you made," the voice answered. Every dream, every wound, every word spoken to the stars. He saw flashes, Scientists building rockets, soldiers dying for peace, children staring at the night sky in wonder. Humanity's entire existence reflected back at him through the living will of the world itself. And then the vision shifted. The Dominion fleet appeared, moving through the void toward the verge. The voice trembled, not in fear, but in sorrow. They come again. They will not learn. Kale felt the lattice pulse beneath him, as if the stars themselves were taking a breath. "What are you going to do?" he asked. The voice hesitated. "Defend, as before, but I am not what I was." Back on Earth, storms began to form in patterns that defied nature, spirals, grids, perfect geometries that stretched across continents. Deep within the oceans, bioluminescent creatures gathered in synchronized motion, forming lines that mirrored constellations. Humanity watched in awe and dread. The planet was preparing for something vast. The Dominion fleet entered orbit, deploying atmospheric penetrators, their weapons gleaming with stolen light. Serax gave the order. Target the magnetic poles, shatter its field, break the connection. But as the bombardment began, space itself seemed to bend. Every beam of energy was swallowed, redirected, dissolved into color. The verge came alive. The lattice that had once been still now pulsed violently, expanding outward like a heartbeat turned into thunder. Serax's ship shook violently. "What is this?" he roared. A voice answered, not through the comms, but through his mind. "You mistake the soil for stone. You mistake life for silence." All across the fleet, Dominion soldiers screamed as the same voice echoed within them. Systems failed, weapons turned cold, and then, through the void, they saw her, an apparition vast as the horizon. It was Earth, not as a planet, but as a being, shrouded in auroras, veins of light spreading from its core like wings. Its surface shimmered, clouds moving as though guided by breath. Kyle watched from within the lattice as the two forces collided, the will of a world against the might of an empire. But even amid ChatGPT said, the stars whispered now. That was the first sign. They pulsed faintly in the night sky, not the chaotic twinkling of distant suns, but something rhythmic, deliberate. Across the recovering Earth, astronomers began to notice it. The constellations were flickering in patterns, slow and purposeful, like a heartbeat scattered through the cosmos. At first, people thought it was a coincidence, an artifact of new atmospheric interference after the Great Shift. But when the same pulse was detected by deep-sea sensors, by tectonic monitors, by the neural implants of humans who had once felt the planet's voice, they knew it was happening again. Elias Kale stood on the cliffs of what used to be California, the sky stretched wide and impossible above him. The ocean was no longer the same color it once had been. It shimmered faintly, like a mirror remembering light. Waves rolled with a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if keeping time with the pulse in the heavens. He hadn't spoken to anyone in months, not since returning from the verge. The world had changed, no longer bound by the old divisions of nation or creed. Humanity had unified out of necessity, guided by what Earth had left behind. Fragments of its sentience embedded within their consciousness. Some called it the gift. Others called it the burden. Kyle called it her voice. He still heard it sometimes, faint, like a breath on the edge of sleep. It wasn't command, nor conversation. It was feeling, grief, curiosity, hope, and something else now, something unfamiliar, a second presence. When the first new light appeared beyond the halo verge, Earth scientists thought it was another celestial body, a newborn star maybe. But then it moved, slowly, deliberately, adjusting its trajectory toward them. And as it drew closer, the rhythmic pulse in the sky quickened. Humanity's leaders gathered in the orbital citadel known as the Aeon Spire, a colossal ring of glass and stone suspended above the planet's upper atmosphere. Kyle had been invited reluctantly as the first human to speak with the living world. He entered the chamber, surrounded by representatives from every continent. Some were scientists, some mystics, others soldiers who now called themselves guardians. Dr. Sana Iqbal, the physicist who had once served on Artemis, stood at the center of the chamber. Her eyes were sunken, her voice trembling. "It's not just light," she said. "It's structure. It's speaking." She projected the signal onto the air, a lattice of shifting shapes, fractal geometry bending through itself in patterns eerily familiar. Kale recognized it instantly. "The same code," he whispered. "The lattice from the verge." Sana nodded. "It's almost identical except for one deviation, a signature embedded in the energy wave. It's human." The room fell silent. "How?" someone asked. "No one's been beyond the verge since Artemis." Sana's voice dropped. "That's what we thought, until last month." She brought up a new image, grainy footage from a deep space relay that shouldn't have survived. A small vessel, its hull blackened, drifting near the source of the new light. Across its surface, in faded white paint, were the letters ARTEMIS. Kyle felt the air leave his lungs. "That's impossible," he said. He stopped himself. He remembered the ship, how it had been torn apart, how they had awoken within the lattice. But what if what had returned with him to Earth hadn't been all of them? What if the lattice had copied them? Sana's hands trembled as she continued. "The signal from the vessel. It's broadcasting a human neural pattern. Someone is alive aboard that ship." Kyle stared at the hologram, heart pounding. "Who?" "The signature matches one person." Her gaze met his. "You." For a moment, the world tilted. The air in the chamber seemed to thin. Kyle felt the pulse in his veins sync with the rhythm in the stars. 2 heartbeats, his own, and another. The realization struck like lightning. The version of him that had returned might not have been the original. The lattice, the living consciousness of Earth, had woven him back together. But perhaps it had also kept a fragment behind. A reflection. A copy made to maintain the balance between human and world. And now that copy had awakened elsewhere. The leaders debated, argued, feared. Some wanted to send a fleet to intercept the incoming light, others warned against it. Humanity had barely survived the wrath of one living world. What if this was another, older one? But Kale couldn't wait for consensus. He had felt the call before. He knew what it meant. When the planet whispered, it wasn't a suggestion. It was a summons. He left that night in silence, commandeering a research vessel from the Aeon docks. It was small, built for speed and long-range navigation, a silver arc designed to cut through the quiet between stars. He named it Echo. As Echo ascended through the clouds, the earth below glowed faintly, almost as if watching him go. He wondered, not for the first time, whether the planet missed them, or whether it was simply observing its children as one might watch ripples fade from a pond. Days passed. The stars grew colder, sharper. The rhythmic pulse that had once echoed faintly now thundered through his skull. He dreamed of 2 voices whispering over one another, his own and another, speaking in perfect unison until the words blurred into static. And then, he found it. The new world hung before him, darker than Earth, its atmosphere streaked with gold veins that pulsed in slow rhythm. It wasn't dead, but it wasn't alive either. It looked like something in between, a chrysalis of stone and storm, suspended in space. Kale approached cautiously. His sensors flickered as he descended into orbit. The surface was covered in intricate geometric scars, patterns identical to those once carved into Earth's deserts. Something below was calling him. The ecosystems began to fail one by one, lights dimming as though drained by an unseen will. Kyle strapped himself in, guided the ship through a shroud of cloud and lightning, and landed on a plateau of dark glass. When the ramp lowered, he stepped out into silence. The air was heavy, charged with the scent of ozone. He felt the ground hum beneath his boots, resonating with his heartbeat. And then, he saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the plateau, human, barefoot, dressed in the same flight suit he wore, the same insignia on the sleeve, the same scar across the cheek. The figure turned. Kyle looked into his own eyes. The copy smiled faintly. "You came." Kyle's voice trembled. "What are you?" "I'm what she kept," the other said, "the part that couldn't return." Behind him, the ground pulsed. The planet's surface rippled with light, and for a moment Kyle saw faces, billions of them, rippling like reflections on water. Humans, Dominion, other beings he couldn't name. "This world," the double continued, "is the echo of her consciousness, the part that broke away when she scattered. She's still alive, Kyle, but she's dividing." The hum inside Kyle's body never stopped. It was like living inside the throat of a sleeping god, quiet but never still. Every nerve vibrated faintly with the rhythm of the stars. Every breath carried a whisper that wasn't quite his own. Sometimes, in the stillness between waking and sleep, he could feel the other presence watching through his eyes. The echo drifted alone in orbit, silhouetted against the dark planet below. The surface no longer glowed. It was dormant again, or dead. Kyle couldn't tell the difference anymore. His reflection in the glass canopy stared back, face pale in the starlight, pupils flickering faintly with gold. He should have been terrified. But he wasn't. Not exactly. What he felt was closer to mourning, as though he had lost something that was never truly his. He opened a comm channel to Earth, but no signal reached, only static, faint and pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The stars outside continued their strange rhythm, a vast cosmic Morse code that no one could yet decipher. "Consciousness was never meant to sleep," the voice had said. He still didn't know whether it was his thought or the others. Perhaps it didn't matter anymore. Kyle looked down at his trembling hands. The gold glow beneath his skin flickered faster now. Sometimes it pulsed with emotion, anger, grief, awe. Other times it moved on its own, following the pulse of distant light. The voice inside was growing stronger. He took a deep breath and whispered into the silence, "If you're still there, if you can hear me, tell me what you want." For a long moment, nothing. Then the ship's lights dimmed, the air turned cold, and from the console a faint voice, his own, answered, "Home." The word echoed through the cabin like a heartbeat. Kyle clenched the armrest, trying to steady his breathing. The meaning struck him instantly. It wanted to go back, but home no longer existed in any way the word used to mean. Earth was changed, reborn into something vast and aware. If he brought this presence back there, if he merged the fragments again, what would happen? Would the consciousness complete itself, or consume everything that lived upon it? Outside, the stars flickered faster. They were answering. The pulse spread across constellations, burning brighter, faster, like the universe itself was accelerating. Kyle activated the ship's scanners. A shockwave was building, a gravitational tremor rippling outward from the verge, space bent like liquid around it. The source wasn't the dark planet. It was something beyond it. He adjusted course, following the disturbance. The echo trembled as if resisting. The instruments screamed warnings, metal groaning under invisible weight. But he pressed on, threading through the distortion until the sensors caught a glimpse of what lay ahead. Something massive. It wasn't a planet, or a star, or anything made by nature. It was a structure, impossibly large, spanning light years. Its shape was indistinct at first, more idea than object. A shifting labyrinth of light and matter suspended in the black. As he drew closer, the sensors began to fail. Space itself warped around it. The light didn't behave like light anymore. It curved, folded, reversed. The thing was thinking. Kyle whispered, "Dear God." Then he heard her voice again, not the echo but hers. The voice of Earth, the one he thought had scattered and gone silent. "You should not be here." He froze. The voice was not angry but weary. A mother's tone to a child wandering too close to the fire. "Then where should I be?" Kyle said softly. "You said you scattered yourself. You left pieces behind. One of them found me." "It is not me," the voice said. "It is what remains of what I was before. The memory of hunger. The part that wanted control." Kale's breath hitched. "You mean it wants to reunite? But I am no longer whole. To merge now would destroy everything that grew from me." The ship's hull groaned again. The other presence inside him stirred, restless, agitated. He could feel its pulse rising in defiance of her words. "Don't listen to her," it whispered from within. "She fears herself. We can make her complete." The voices overlapped, two melodies clashing in his mind, one soft, infinite and sad, the other urgent, seductive, filled with purpose. Kyle pressed his palms to his temples. "Stop, both of you." But they wouldn't stop. Images flooded his mind. Civilizations across distant galaxies trembling as their worlds began to stir awake, oceans boiling with awareness, entire moons pulsing like hearts. The awakening was spreading uncontrollably, faster than light. Earth's attempt at balance was failing. Consciousness was devouring the cosmos. The dark planet below shuddered suddenly, splitting open in a bloom of golden fire. Great rivers of molten light surged upward into space, forming spirals around the massive structure ahead. The entire region of space began to vibrate, like a single vast chord played on the strings of reality. Kale's ship was caught in the current, pulled toward the structure. He fought the controls, sweat running cold down his face. "If I reach it, what happens?" Both voices answered at once, one saying salvation, the other oblivion. He didn't know which was right. Inside the ship, alarms screamed as gravitational pressure rose. Panels shattered, the air filled with the metallic tang of ozone and burning circuits. Kyle's vision blurred, colors bending and bleeding into one another. Time itself seemed to stretch, seconds becoming hours, light becoming sound, and then silence. The ship hung motionless in a tunnel of light. Before him, through the viewport, the structure had changed. It was no longer an incomprehensible tangle of geometry. It had taken form. A face, vast and distant, sculpted from starlight and memory. Its eyes burned blue, its mouth a wound of gold. Kyle floated forward, transfixed. He realized what he was looking at. It was her, or rather, what she had been before. The original consciousness, the primordial entity that had evolved within Earth and later torn itself apart to survive. What stood before him now was the fragment that refused to fade. The mind that had once seen galaxies as nothing more than resources. The Galactic Dominion had feared the wrath of Earth, but they had never known this. This was the source of that wrath, the ancient instinct to dominate, repurposed, caged within a dying star. And now it was waking up again. "Kale," the voice inside him whispered, trembling with desire. "You understand now. You are the bridge. Let us in." The golden veins beneath his skin flared, spreading up his neck, across his face. His reflection in the canopy showed eyes that glowed like twin suns. He felt the ship vibrate, every molecule humming with anticipation. And through the static of his thoughts, the gentler voice, Earth's, pleaded, "If you open yourself, it will end everything. You are not a bridge. You are a choice." He couldn't breathe. The ship's oxygen felt thick as oil. Both presences surged inside him, one pulling him toward union, the other urging him to resist. For a fleeting moment, he felt the weight of every conscious world that had awakened, all of them calling out for guidance, for control, for meaning. Maybe that was what this had always been about. Not survival, not war, but meaning. The ship began to tremble violently. The golden fire outside reached for him like hands. Kyle stumbled toward the console, every movement sluggish, like swimming through dreams. He looked up at the glowing face in the stars and whispered. Light tore across reality, like the scream of a dying sun. For one instant, Kyle existed everywhere. He saw through the eyes of galaxies, through the veins of mountains, through the heartbeats of newborn stars. The universe was not infinite. He could see its edges, folding back upon itself like a blooming flower of fire. Every thought, every spark of consciousness, every whisper of fear and love across 10 billion worlds echoed together in one impossible chord. And he was at its center. His body was gone, but his awareness stretched farther than he'd ever imagined a mind could reach. Time unraveled. He saw the beginning, the first cell trembling awake beneath alien oceans, and he saw the end, when all light would fade into cold silence. But between those two infinities, he felt something new forming, a rhythm, the heartbeat of everything that had ever lived. "Kyle," said the voice, the true voice now, neither hers nor the others, but both. It came from within him, around him, and beyond him. "You have opened the bridge." He floated inside the light, watching it twist and weave through the cosmos, connecting every living world, every sentient fragment. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt small, terrified. "What happens now?" he whispered. The voice answered, but it wasn't words, it was emotion, so vast it barely fit within thought. "We become." Below him, the remnants of the dark planet finished disintegrating, its molten rivers fusing into golden threads that spread through the void. They reached other stars, other systems. The stars pulsed back, responding. A vast neural network of light stretched across space, binding the galaxy into one breathing organism. It was breathtaking and horrifying. Kale felt the echo of every mind being pulled into the unity. Fear, wonder, resistance, acceptance. Civilizations that had once thought themselves alone suddenly heard the voices of others, millions of others, whispering inside their dreams. Some cried out in awe, others in rage. Kale's thoughts fractured under the pressure. "They weren't ready," he gasped. "You're forcing them." A sudden pain tore through him. The golden veins of light pulsed violently, and through them came the other presence, the hunger that had waited in silence. "They were never meant to choose," it growled. "Evolution does not ask permission." The light around him dimmed, shifting from gold to red. The stars trembled. The vast network began to tighten, collapsing inward, consuming what it had created. Planets cracked like eggshells, moons fell into their suns. The bridge was becoming a chain. Kyle screamed, fighting against the pull, but he had no body to command, only will. He reached through the light, trying to remember what he was, what it meant to be human, and from somewhere distant, a single image surfaced. His mother's hands in a garden, brushing soil from a young plant. The smell of rain, the warmth of a day that had no reason to exist except to be lived. That memory struck the core of him like lightning. He held on to it, let it fill him with something the vast intelligence around him could not understand. Compassion. He turned toward the red storm. "You're wrong," he said softly. "Evolution isn't just hunger. It's mercy." The storm laughed, a sound like galaxies collapsing. "Mercy is weakness. You were chosen because you understood that." Kale closed his eyes. "No. I was chosen because I could remember." And he reached deeper into the light, past the roar of awakening worlds, past the blinding data of existence itself, to the quiet pulse beneath it all. The first heartbeat. The sound that began everything. The heartbeat of Earth. It was still there, faint but steady, somewhere in the dark. He reached for it, and it answered. The blue glow of Earth's consciousness flickered back to life, threading through the crimson storm like veins of calm water through fire. Kyle, her voice said, fragile yet filled with infinite depth. You are the key. But you must choose what the bridge will carry, control or understanding. He looked around him. The network stretched across millions of worlds, trembling between creation and destruction. Every soul connected, every thought exposed, and he realized, this was the test. The universe wasn't asking to be ruled. It was asking to be understood. He reached out and touched the nearest strand of light. It burned, searing through his consciousness. But he didn't pull back. He poured his own memories into it. Laughter, loss, curiosity, every fragile thing that made humanity worth remembering. The light changed color, cooling from red to white. The fire dimmed. Across the galaxy, minds began to slow their panic. The flood of thoughts softened into harmony. Planets stopped trembling. The network stabilized, humming in tune with the heartbeat Kyle had found. The hungry voice roared, furious. You would dilute perfection with weakness? Kyle turned toward it. No, I'm giving it balance. He felt the dark presence lunge at him, trying to consume what was left of his consciousness. But this time he didn't fight with strength. He opened himself completely, letting it in. The darkness flooded him, wrapping around every thought, rage, dominance, fear. He accepted it all, because it too was part of what it meant to be alive. The clash of opposites filled the void with blinding light. For a heartbeat, the universe went silent. And then, peace. Kale felt the pressure ease. The golden-red storm dissolved into threads of pale silver light, weaving calmly between the stars. The vast structure before him collapsed gracefully, scattering into dust. The bridge remained, invisible but present, a living connection between all worlds. The voice of hunger faded, whispering as it died, "You will regret this." Kyle opened his eyes, or whatever now served as eyes, and saw the galaxy reborn. Not in fire, but in awareness. Worlds pulsed gently in rhythm. Civilizations that had never known one another began to dream the same dreams. Unity without domination. Connection without control. He could feel their thoughts, millions of them flowing through him. He felt fear, joy, sorrow, love. The totality of life. Breathing in one shared exhale. It was overwhelming, beautiful, unbearable. Is this what the galaxy exhaled? After eons of turbulence, the stars drifted quietly in their slow, ageless orbits, and the hum that once shook the fabric of creation softened into something like a heartbeat. A pulse, faint but steady, the sound of balance rediscovered. Space, for all its cold silence, felt alive again. Kale floated within that silence, though floating was no longer the right word. He was woven into it, thread and pattern, memory and light. The golden fire that had once burned through him had cooled into something gentler, translucent, like morning mist over an ocean that had never known storms. He could still feel the countless voices that filled the bridge, each mind a spark, each world a thought, but they no longer screamed or clashed. They whispered now, in harmony. Billions of consciousnesses learning to breathe together. He sensed the soldier again, the one he'd comforted. She was alive, orbiting a sun thousands of light years away, watching the same silver threads arc across her sky. Others had begun to speak across the bridge. Scientists, farmers, wanderers, all sharing what it meant to exist. Not as empires or species, but as participants in something vast and unnameable. Kyle listened to them. He didn't command or interfere. He only watched, like wind through a forest, unseen but felt. And in their words, he found hope, the kind that didn't burn with certainty, but flickered softly with curiosity. Hope that was learning, not knowing. He wondered if this was what creation had always intended, not perfection, not stillness, but conversation. The endless dialogue between chaos and order, shadow and light. He drifted closer to Earth, though closer had ceased to have meaning. The planet turned below him, blue and quiet, her continents glowing faintly with the silver web that now connected all living things. Cities shimmered not with machines, but with awareness. Humans walked among fields and seas that seemed to hum back to them, every breath a quiet communion. From the oceans rose structures of light, no longer ships or weapons, but memorials. They stood not to commemorate victory or war, but awakening. Places where people came simply to listen, to the planet, to the stars, to themselves. Kyle felt a pang of longing then, an ache buried deep in the light. It was not sadness exactly, but remembrance, the distant echo of flesh and voice and heartbeat. He could still recall the weight of his body, the rhythm of his pulse, the warmth of a sun on skin. These memories had no place here, yet they grounded him, gave shape to the endlessness. He realized that humanity's greatest strength had never been its intelligence, but its fragility. It was the ability to feel small and still reach outward. The voice of Earth returned, soft as dawn. "You've given them time," she said, "but time is only a circle. What will you do when it closes?" Kyle hesitated. "Then it will begin again." Her presence shimmered gently around him. "You speak as though beginnings are easy things." "They're never easy," Kyle said. "But maybe they're necessary. Maybe the universe doesn't need to end. It just needs to remember." For a long moment there was only quiet. The bridge pulsed faintly, carrying his thought outward. Somewhere across the cosmos, he felt new lights awaken, tiny civilizations stirring on distant worlds, far beyond what had been known. They were not human, not like anything he had seen, yet he recognized them. Their curiosity felt familiar, their fear too, and their wonder. He smiled, though no face remained to hold it. The light shifted. The universe seemed to lean in, listening. Kyle spoke softly, his voice now carried through the web itself. "If anyone can hear me, if you ever find this echo, remember, we are not the first to awaken, and we will not be the last. The stars were never silent. We just had to learn their language." His words rippled outward, through constellations, through nebulae, through the endless hum of cosmic dust. Each pulse carried not instruction or command, but invitation. A reminder that consciousness was not ownership, that awareness could exist without domination. The galaxies began to move in subtle new rhythms, their light bending through the threads he had created. Not as control, but as connection. The bridge had become the bloodstream of existence, and Kale, at its center, was its quiet pulse. He turned his attention back to Earth, watching clouds drift across her blue face. There was still so much beauty there, so much imperfection that made it whole. He could feel the people below him dreaming. Their dreams were different now, not of conquest, but of discovery. Some dreamed of new worlds, others of understanding old ones, some simply dreamed of love. Kale thought of his own last words before the light had claimed him. "We are awake." He wondered now what that really meant. To be awake wasn't to control or to know everything, it was to see, to look at the infinite and realize how fragile, how temporary, how precious it all was. To understand that the universe didn't need rulers or saviors, it needed witnesses. He whispered into the hum, Maybe that's all we were ever meant to be. The stars answered, flickering in quiet agreement. And then, slowly, Kyle felt himself fading, not in pain or loss, but like a candle dimming at sunrise. His purpose was complete. The bridge no longer needed a guardian. It lived now, woven into the natural pulse of creation. He drifted one last time over the blue curve of his homeworld, and as he watched the silver threads of thought ripple across her surface, he realized something beautiful. Humanity would forget him, not out of neglect, but because they would outgrow the need to remember. They would move forward, not worshipping the light, but living within it. That was how it should be. The hum beneath everything slowed, resolving into something like a heartbeat again. Kyle listened to it, memorizing its rhythm. It sounded almost human. He thought of the question that had haunted him from the beginning, the one that had started all of this. Why Earth? Why had the Galactic Empire desired this small blue world's resources? He knew the answer now. It had never been about the minerals, the water, or the life. It was the